Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialka. Today is Feb 15, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Thank you, Rob, and feel free to raise your hand in the green room and jump in if you have any astute questions or enlightening observations.
Never as astute as you, but I'll share my observations if I can. Have fun.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Patrick. I'm going to let you pronounce your last name so I don't mispronunciate it, even though I did get a good education.
In Sicily, SCI is pronounced SH, so it would be Sciarratta.
Sciarratta, that's not so hard. Patrick
Wow.
Sciarratta.
Easy to say.
What a pleasure. And Patrick, where are you calling in from?
I'm actually in Ridgefield, Connecticut at the moment, just north of Manhattan, about an hour north.
Let's just jump into it. Patrick, it's an honor and a pleasure. What's the best thing for a human being?
Well, love and care. That should really come first. And then for the human being's growth, I've always been in favor of travel as a great educational tour. If you go with an open heart, you really learn tremendous knowledge about the human condition from those outside of your sphere.
Dude, I love all those words. You really sussed it out well. And what's your favorite form, Patrick, of how information comes into you?
Well, it depends. I'm an artist in my heart. I've done a lot of theater, and I've always heard and believe that theater is the biggest lie in order to tell the biggest truth. And so, you see Hamlet getting stabbed, but he's not dying, but you learn the lessons that Shakespeare wanted us to learn in those moments. And I feel that way about music, painting, all different forms of art, as well as the performative artwork. And that's how I appreciate what I learn. What I take in tends to be like everyone else in modern times, visual, oral, written word. I really do enjoy them all. I love to read, but I also love to watch videos when I feel that they're both interesting and entertaining. So I take in certain information, but then really, as we used to say in the 60s, kind of grok it when I hear it coming through the arts.
Dude, how articulate, man. You really get what I'm after, and I appreciate it. It's fun what you said. You evoked a lot. And Augusto Paulo, the theater of the oppressed guy, I'm going to divert for 1 second from the script because I've been trying to figure out, asking people for years, what is the first human invention? What's the first thing humans invented? Grunting or gesture, or, one guy said lying, but Augusto said theater, which encompasses a lot. That could have been the first thing humans invented. And I just love that idea. And we're going to definitely get into theater, but let's go back to the reading for a second. Did you become a reader because your parents were reading as an example? They told you to read, or on your own?
Well, you offered 3 ideas. If they were reading, I would have gotten it by example.
Yeah.
I think they mostly did the second 2. I only noticed them reading like daily newspapers or magazines. So they told me of the importance of reading. And they read to me when I was very young, but I sort of went off on my own as I grew up and had my own interests.
Yeah, then you started reading Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land, and you picked up new Finneganese words like grok. What a great thing, inventing words. So back to information. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think to share it with others. I think this is the very same reason we're speaking right now. I think there's a misconception that we speak to communicate. I really think we speak to hear our own self-talk and then communicate. I mean, I think it's part of it, but it's secondary. We gather things that we love and we want to share them. So I think that it's organic in that way. And I think that's why we share what we share, because we want the expression of who we are to become clear to others.
It's beautiful. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Well, if it was a want, it would be inventive. But I do think it's innate, and I think it's a need. I don't think that it's that much akin to everybody wanting what the Joneses have. But there are things that we want in our lives and need in our lives to make us feel that we're whole, that we're useful human beings, that we're both contributing, we're in love, we're sharing love. And those things, I think, are the reason we exist. I think it was Woody Allen once said that without that, and without humor, life was just one long dental appointment. And I think we don't want that. So we try to find the things that excite us so we can excite others with them.
Yeah, that's why they invented nitrous oxide laughing gas. Talk about human inventions. Do thoughts create emotions?
Yes, I think we're thinking human beings. So whether we know it or not, we're thinking. We're thinking about what happened to us in the past. And that creates an emotion. I think everything happens in the past, right? Even this. As I'm speaking to you, it's taking you a millisecond or two to get what I'm saying. Therefore, as I'm saying it to you, you're receiving it in the past. So at that point, we need some kind of guide markers to help us move down the road. And I think that's where the emotions come from, that we think certain things, we try to express those things, and they cause either pain or joy or happiness or sorrow in their expression, reward, whatever they may bring out in us is what I would consider an emotion based on a thought that I wanted to share with you.
Boy, you're a super dude. I really appreciate this. So do you think, I know it's both and it depends. Some of these questions are stupid and you get it. It's just a jumping off point. Your observations of humans, are they more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Well, if we go with what I was saying before, these are very existential questions that I don't normally deal with. I don't know how to answer them, but I would say that if I was correct before, then I deal with people mostly as feeling human beings. Yeah. Because they have thought, and then they come to me with their thoughts, which they give to me in a sense, feeling those thoughts. Yeah. I think you should. I wish you would, kind of thing. Are obviously thoughts, but they come to me as feelings.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of my favorite lines. Bridget Bardot said, "I don't think when I make love." And I'm like, good luck. You're doing the most sensuous thing your body can practically do, and you want to turn your brain off. Or it's like people, when they meditate, they go, I'm going to think about not thinking.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
In one sense, I'd say reflect.
Nice.
On what comes at me, so I can bounce that off and make sense out of it. And secondly, I would just say, the feeling and the thinking on the thinking side makes sense. If I can make sense of something, then it has bounced to me and bounces off, and then I can move further and forward from there.
Wow. Can humans think without language?
In my early years, which is 50 years ago, I was a mime. And I would say, again, yes and no, like to most of these answers. I tried as a mime, and when I was successful, to get people to see something more than just to think about it, to actually, see a wall in front of them. But of course, they were thinking in their minds, oh, that's a wall. However, there was my opportunity for them to come to that feeling without the verbiage involved in normal discourse.
Yeah. Chomsky says that a language is not just words. It's culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Patrick, say it again?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's a word that can I say this, or are you in the middle of asking me a question?
No, go ahead, say it.
It popped into my head when you said this. I remember many, many years ago, I was going to the Israel Festival to be the resident director of the Israel Festival. And I know New York very well, and I know that a very sort of hip terminology, just a word, is copacetic.
Yes.
A band called the Copacetics. And it's a very Black Street term. Everything's copacetic. So when I got off the plane on El Al in Tel Aviv, and someone picked me up and called his boss, and in Hebrew, I guess, said everything was kol basedek. Whoa! It's the same word, and that's being applied to me. I asked him, what does that word mean? And he said, everything's okay. And I'm thinking, how did it get from this sort of Yiddish, Hebrew basis to the streets of New York? And it turns out that, just very briefly, the African-American folks who worked for the Jewish people in Harlem at the time lit all of the fireplaces and the gas heat because during the Sabbath, the Jewish folks couldn't do that. So when it was all lit and everything was lighted and warm and they were ready to leave their work for the day, they wanted to know if everything was okay. And of course, the Jewish person said, copacetic. And copacetic became copacetic on the streets because the meaning was obvious, but the meaning was really entrenched in this situational conversation and in the two divergent cultures that came to play together there.
Yeah, dude, that was great divert. This is what I love is the little mini diverts, because that reminded me of one of the greatest books written on jazz is called Really the Blues by Mez Mesro. He was Louis Armstrong's Jewish pot dealer. and he happened to be the guy who created slang. And it's amazing because that goes right to the roots of what you just said. So my question was leading to this one. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, as I said, when I was younger, I was a mime. So language breaking down was never a problem because I was also a magician. And I figured with mime and magic on my side, who needs words? But currently, I work alongside this very small organization called the United Nations. And there, it's very easy for language to break down with sometimes disastrous results. I travel often. Right before the pandemic, in the before times, as I like to say, actually just before the pandemic hit, I was in Malaysia, then, I was first in Thailand, then Malaysia, then Singapore, then Serbia, then Hungary, and I came home from Poland, and I didn't come home to New York, I came home to Salt Lake City because I had a conference there. So that's where language breaks down. On your end, you're getting really tired and you can't really hear people, even if they're speaking the same language you are. But if they're speaking other languages, it becomes a test of your ability to understand situationally what's going on. and to see if you can communicate in certain ways. I always try to understand some of the language for where I'm traveling to, but this is a real life issue and situation for people who in life and death situations need to understand the language, and when they don't, it becomes a critical issue where translation could mean one thing or another, very good or very bad. So this is a tough issue that I face often.
You might have loved it. About a month ago, I says, "What do you do when language breaks down?" And the guy goes, "Group hug."
Yeah, well, that's trying to do that with Mr. Putin. You know, can't even get 25 feet of the guy.
2 questions from Alan Turing, 1950. Is thinking a function of the soul?
For me, it is. I see that there is so much useless information in the world that I'm forced to edit what I can take in. And I can either take in the banal, which is very easy, or the more serious, dense information, which is much harder. Therefore, I'm making not only a conscious decision, but a decision that expresses who I am and why I choose this over that. So I really feel that my interest in learning is totally of the soul.
Beautiful. And the second Turing question is, can machines think?
I would say that the machines can do the work of thought, but cannot program the thought. They would know to think, but if you tell them, I really need you to tell me what 1 + 1 equals, the ability is there to say 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
But not to ask the question of, who came first, the chicken or the egg. I think that's really what thought is, and that's us.
That's my one of my favorite Frank Zappa songs. He goes, 1 + 1 = 11. 2 + 2 = 22.
Ben is no longer with us.
Oh, I know, man. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
For me, they're almost one and the same. That you sparked one of these divergence. I remember being, I guess, maybe 17 and sneaking out to the village and hanging out on a curb, literally on a curb, with Frank Zappa, who was drinking wine at the time. And we shot the what for like an hour. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting here with Frank Zappa. And I know I really search for meaning, but the joy of the search is what I live for.
Wow. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
I would say the first, that it's bubbling there before we get there, but that we affect it.
Yeah.
And therefore, it might seem to us in a very shallow way that we're creating the consciousness. But I do think it precedes the world and we come to it. Often, I think people see themselves as point A and the world as point B. I have often seen the world as point A and me as point B. I am the interloper. I'm the one who's coming in to affect this situation, rather than it's all about me and viewing the world in that context.
What a great word, man. You're giving me some great words. I'm going to look up etymologically, copacetic, interloper. You're improving my vocabulary, dude. So Audre Lorde, the poet, says you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded, she said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest or gravitate to? And just to clarify, I set up some of these questions with cue quotes. You can put them into the context of the quotes if you like, but it's basically, what new tool do you gravitate towards? And the word new isn't that important, so just to give you the big picture view on the question.
Yeah, I think can you ask the question again? Because I want to state this properly. If you could ask
Yeah.
it again.
No, I can do it again. You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tool. That's Audre Lorde. Then Yvonne Rainer, her peer, said you can if you expose the tool. So I just sort of say, what tool do you suggest?
Well, I'm thinking clever honesty.
Oh, wow.
I really think that our president, who does not get a lot of credit, used this against Putin. You cannot out Putin Putin. So you can't destroy that master with his own tools, but you can out him. And that's amazingly what I think our State Department did in the past week or so. Like, the false flag operation, or they were going to shut out all the lights by, and every time we got a whiff of one of these things, he would just say it. The State Department would come out and say it because Biden told them to. And I think they're starting to back off now. We're destroying the master's house with the master's tools by exposing it, by exposing those tools. That's a really good example.
That is brilliant, because it's almost goes into the court jester thing, but no one's paying. I mean, it's an amazing thing you said. We're going to get more into that. Now I've just got this added to my script, and it's more playful. What new toy do you suggest? Now, not necessarily dismantle the master's house, but just in general, what new toy do you gravitate towards?
Well, one thing that really has always helped me is juggling.
That is a great.
It's very complex and very simple because it crosses your brain. It's not this way, it's this way. So the right side of my brain has got to, handle a left-handed thing and the left with the right. And yet once you start doing it, you stop looking at the balls, and it becomes a kind of Zen experience. And it's a great tool because everyone wants to know how to do it. And if you need to be calmed down and you do it, people will come over to you and say, can you teach me that? And for me, that's a fun game then. That becomes a tool to meet other people, to center myself, and to just have fun.
Oh, I love it. I used to juggle 5 tennis balls with a second person on the boardwalk in Venice with a bounce involved. And it was so fun because it was interactive. But my favorite juggling thing, I'm not a good juggler, but my favorite juggling thing is, you have 2 balls going up in one hand, right, and then this hand, you just hold the ball and you go like this.
Were you on the beach at Venice doing this with a guy named Ray Abruzzo?
Nope. No. His name was Phil Chamberlain.
Ray was in The Sopranos. He was little Carmine. We grew up together. And Ray moved out to Venice, and a great juggler as well as a great actor. And I thought maybe you encountered each other on the beach.
There's a chance, man. I've been going down there for 41 years, and I love all the encounters I have because it's such an amazing, village of the whole world. Isn't
there a bar like the Blue something?
There's a lot of bars. They're
right on the water. Blue.
The Blue Lagoon Saloon comes to mind, but there's a lot of that have come and gone over the years. So, Patrick, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
I had a father who, when I was growing up, he used to have a contest with my sister and I, who could fall asleep the first when we took naps during the afternoon, when Mom made Dad do that. And I have had the great pleasure of putting my head down on a pillow and falling asleep almost immediately. I'm fortunate that somehow the strife of the day doesn't really carry over into my evening. I don't dream, though. I think I'm really weird in that. I don't remember any of my dreams ever. I fall asleep like a log, like, the bomb could go off and I wouldn't know it. And I wake up almost at the same time every day without an alarm clock. So there's something wired in me that says, okay, enough, you're out now, and go to bed. I carry a lot of that stress during the day, but at night, it's relieved.
Beautiful.
Go figure.
Yeah, I like that. Marshall McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So let's say, humans invented theater. We don't really know, unless you're somebody like you who studied it, that how theater has shaped our behavior. And so McLuhan's main question, one of his main probes was, why do we ignore so in the long run, so we can learn to cope with what we don't like? If we process these hidden psychic effects, we can cope with what we don't like about the invention. So McLuhan's question was, why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though artists are broadcasting them to us?
Well, I don't think we want to. I think it's facile to say that A plus B equals C when it comes to the human mind. People, I think, often are not capable or ready to accept the difficult answers to questions in their lives. In some cases, they'd rather them remain questions because of the mystery involved. In some cases, it's very hard to face facts. If you are, a drug addict and you're watching a play about the horrible effects of illicit drugs on a person, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stop doing drugs. You might tune that out, or you might say, well, that's true for another person. You know how people always say that, don't drive after you take these pills. They, what the heck? I know what I'm doing. People, I think, tend to dismiss what they don't want to know.
Yeah.
And you can be the greatest artist in the world, but if the receptor is closed, it's closed.
Wow.
Open. I think mostly we have the arts and we have great artists. And we have the Bertolt Brechts of the world and all the great artists that we have, because mostly our receptors are open, at least partially, most of the time. And things like satire and irony enable those receptors to stay open even further, because they're the twist. They're what we didn't expect. They're the O. Henry twist. And that is often the thing that brings us to a realization. Oh.
Epiphanies, man, you really anticipated what we're going to get into soon. Do artists have a moral obligation?
Yeah, I think artists have an obligation to be good.
Yeah.
To do their work good, to do their work well. And I think I remember hearing in a reel, not hearing it live, but hearing Frank Sinatra say that all I really owe the audience is a good show.
Yeah.
And that should be the stimulus for them to come back and see me again, because they bring their own truth to my performance. Not that I have to be all, kindness and good to puppies and stuff. It happens, that happens, but that's not why the audience came to see Sinatra. And I think they benefited from a good performance.
Yeah, because I love Louis Buñuel, the great surrealistic filmmaker, and he has like young hoodlums kicking dogs and beating up winos, and it's like, does he have a moral obligation? Yeah, he has a moral obligation to make his film good.
What was Buñuel's movie that you think of? Or name one or two.
Well, Los Olvidados is about the street kids in New York, but I mean, he does. Some of these guys, Pasolini, these guys make films that are like gross and you don't want people to do that. Or as my friend said so well, David Lynch once, she goes, Blue Velvet, everybody was like, that's a great film. She goes, yeah, I can understand it's a great film, but I don't want to spend 2 hours of my life with those people. And that was like a really good statement for me to hear, because it's a pick and choose world. You sort of said it earlier. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Well, I think they both have their place. I often speak with some people who are far more conservative than me and want to aggressively speak about someone who's liberal. But I do think that those who are conservative own the past. And it's important for me to know the past. But it's much more important for us to know that we have a future. For me, I'm more afraid of the past because it sort of holds back, but I love the past because it implies the future if you're open enough to accept that. I mean, there are some people who only want the past and they live in their past. And there are some people who feel that it's only about the future, but that's kind of dilettante in thinking, that you're doing something that hasn't come before. I think the melding of the past and the future is what makes my present moment.
Wow, that's heavy. I was holding this quote, but this is Wyndham Lewis, the hidden ground behind McLuhan and James Joyce. He said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So, that's like the ultimate blending of both.
Yeah.
And it is so important because what you described there was what McLuhan called rear view mirrorism, that we go forward and we keep looking in the rear view mirror of everything.
I think Jung also talks about us being related to the collective unconsciousness. All those who have come before us help us fulfill what we will become tomorrow.
Wait, I missed who said that?
Carl Jung.
Oh, Carl Jung. Oh, we have a Carl Jung reading club on Zoom, man. That's really sweet. So I appreciate that. Patrick, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Yeah, they all flood into my head. I don't know, maybe I was 8 or 9 and no, I don't want to tell that story. Well, I was playing in the backyard. I really loved my backyard and I really loved my little rabbit. I had a little white bunny and I was in a tree. We had a peach tree in the back and I jumped out and landed on the bunny and killed it.
Oh.
Out of my head. It's like, never going to jump out of a tree with an animal nearby me again. I don't know exactly what the meaning of that was, but boy, that really stayed flashed in my head. And then when I was 16, or 15, I guess, I wrote a poem, and it was my first poem, and it was called Life Really. And it made me feel that I was moving from childhood into an understanding of real life, adult life. And I remember that the poem, I'm still looking for it, that the poem kind of scared me because it was a transitional moment in my own life.
It's your own poem, your own art scared you. That's in that you could recognize that. That's really heavy. Yeah. Did you continue writing poems the rest of your life?
Poems and then theater. When I got into the theater, I saw that actors make nothing, directors make next to nothing, producers make something, and then those who really control the scene make everything. So I started my own theater company. I may not have been correct in that assumption because I wound up losing money, but the Bond Street Theater is still alive today. They left Saturday for South Yemen, and the theater company that I created, we did 12 shows together. I would say mostly that I wrote in concert with my actors. They were physical comedy pieces. We did them free to the public on the streets of Manhattan. We never worked in a theater. I got arrested doing theater out on the streets in New York, but they were ensemble pieces. And I would come with an idea like, let's do a play about television or about shopping malls or whatever, and then we would construct them together. So it was mostly plays, but all of my plays are musical comedies, and they all end in the end of the world because I really want the audience to tell me how to rewrite the play. So after we finished the play, and as I said, they all ended in the end of the world, we would sit the audience down. We were outside in Central Park, Washington Square Park, or somewhere in one of the boroughs parks. And we'd ask them, how would you end this play? How could we make this play better? And so then I was making my audience writers along with me. And the songs were generally fun and upbeat. And, it was very black comedy. We were making these musical comedies about the end of the world. We kept on, no matter what the theme was, it always ended the same way. And I think by the end, maybe the 10th or the 11th, the audience really knew who we were, and they knew that the end of the play wasn't when they got up and left, that they stayed around for a while and chatted. That was great. The theater company has gotten a different direction since then, but that's what I was doing. I was starting to write poetry, and then I moved into rock music. Revival was an album I had, one of the albums that actually came out of my music. And I worked with a couple of other rock musicians, just editing some of their work, and got mostly involved in theater and the writing there.
Well, we're going to get deeper into all that, a little more on your background. And that was beautiful. You summarized that so well and really perked my ears up. I love that. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
I just happened to see an episode of Monk, the guy in San Francisco who's got OCD. And he says that a lot of things in his life, like everything he recognizes, is a blessing and a curse. Yeah. And I do feel that memory is that. Yeah. I feel both. I feel them about my parents. My parents both passed away in their mid-90s last year.
Yeah.
I lost my wife to leukemia, and then my two parents, and it's been a rough sort of 2-3 years here. But I was never close with my mom until the last 8 months of her life. And I came to this home where my parents live. This is their estate, and moved out of New York City to just help the family. And we became incredibly close. I think we realized that we were both exactly the same person. And for our entire lifetimes, we were just walking down dark alleyways, not recognizing it. We binged together, we were watching TV, we were in the kitchen every 10 minutes making something, because I love to cook. And that memory, after a lifetime of not really being close with my mom, is an incredible blessing. And it's a terrible curse. Because I think how long I wasted. Because we really got along. At the funeral, I even said during the eulogy that I did not feel like I lost my mom, because I just didn't have a mom for so long. I lost a good friend.
Oh, my
that was almost worse. And it was really heartbreaking. My dad and I always got along. We were very tight. So I knew that would be tough, but I didn't think this until it happened. And the memory that I live with every day, and I look at my mom every day in a picture over there, it's an incredibly beautiful memory and a terrible, terrible feeling of stupid loss that I blame on myself.
Oh, don't blame yourself. That was touching. I know these go good when either I tear up or they tear up. And I teared up there. It was really deep because Oscar Wilde, being a Black comedian, or a satirist yourself, Oscar Wilde said, "Women fret becoming their mothers. Men don't. And that's their problem."
Well,
because we're usually more raised by our moms than our dads. And then women our age, when they turn about 50, they fret, they go, "I'm turning into my mother." And men don't do that. But you said, when you said that you were like, me and my mom, like, the beauty is that you got to that point where you could bond with her a little. That I would only say you did great because you did. You got that. Some people don't even get that point where they could bond,
Believe me, I feel extremely lucky.
Yeah.
To have had it in my life.
Well, you sort of answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyways, just in case. Tell me someone within your immediate family, just briefly, and then outside your immediate family, who had an impact on you, was like a role model, and what specifically was that impact? Just briefly.
Well, as I said, my dad, he really taught me how to be balanced. He was either the most conservative liberal or the most liberal conservative I've ever met. He really and he was smart and savvy and a real fun guy. And I tried to live my life by some of the tenets he taught me. He was very honest. He was very friendly, very funny. He could start a conversation with anyone. And he taught me that was really the key to life, that we needed to continually start conversations with people because it's the only way we grow. And I mean, he would do it, in church and anywhere. He was that kind of guy. Outside, I've had many great relations with people my own age, older. Certainly, I remember a woman who I became very close to in the 80s and 90s. Her name was Barbara Barondes Mclean. She happened to be Marilyn Monroe's, what do they call it? She owned the property that Marilyn lived in, and she was an actor herself. So she was a landlord, she was an actor, and she was a writer. She had been in a number of movies before there were talkies. And then she came to New York and did a lot of theater. I was working as the director for the performing arts at Hunter College at the time, City University of New York. And she came and made a very large contribution. And the head of development at the school told me, "You now belong to her." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Just make her happy. Just whatever it is, just stay with her." And I pawned off a lot of my duties as director for the performing arts, and I became her artistic director. And she showed me so much about how to make performing arts, everything outside of the creative element, how it worked, who to talk to, who to meet. She introduced me to so many people that it really had a tremendous effect on the Bond Street Theater, the theater company that I was running at the time. And that person passed away in the year 2000, but she'll always have a very special place in my heart because she taught me so much about the mechanism of theater and the way theater works best.
Wow, well put, dude. You're super articulate, and I appreciate it. I appreciate your passion there, Patrick. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Well, they're Catholic. We're Italian Catholics.
Did you check out? Did you ever check out?
Yeah. Oh, certainly.
About what age?
What's that?
About what age?
Well, I was a faithful altar boy when I was 16, 17, very into it. Then I got caught in the large walk-in refrigerator drinking the wine. I lost my status. But by the time I was 18, I was feeling that the church was rather repressive. I think if Pope Francis was Pope then, I might not have felt that way. But I felt like the Catholic Church was becoming also a political organization in the United States. I think it has become that, unfortunately, at least up till 2016, if not 2020. And I lost my interest in organized religion.
Yeah.
I accepted the Tao. I started to become very interested in Buddhism, or the Tao in particular. And I found that there were many other amazing religions, and many of them were based in ancient fears of God, ancient fears of the drought, ancient fears of the bad crop, and they started in those areas. So I've always been a little skeptical about getting too far involved with organized religion, especially ones that want my money. But I do enjoy the ones that are more interested in sharing spiritual interests that I also have. So kind of a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah. Do you pray?
No.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Congratulations. No.
Dude,
we forget all those terrible things you did. The good things you did outweigh them. So come on up. Although I'm sure most of my friends would be in the other area, I don't really think about that too much. I feel like really beyond my pay grade. I mean, I know you've been asking me a lot of existential kind of questions. Admittedly, I don't think about these things too often. I'm amazed that you say I'm articulate. I'm not even sure I know what I'm saying because
that's it. That's the flow I want to need. I want it just to be a natural flowing conversation.
Some people say they never say the same things twice. I feel like we're never saying the same things once here.
No, that's good. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Well, you know, with the amount of people in the world, I mean, I've traveled to China. When you look at 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion people, it's very hard to say that it's either or. I think I've met and I think I know of patently evil people. But I do think that almost all of them, and I can't say for sure because I haven't met everybody, they have been shaped by something in their lives. I mean, we talked at the very beginning about Putin, you know, and he may look like one of the evil alpha males that are running one of these autocratic countries. But, you know, he did come out of the Soviet Union. He saw it crushed. It was his job. He was in the KGB. I can really understand that he would like to go back to the good old days. Yeah. I think I saw a documentary on Monty Python, and the first thing I thought of was, I wish they would come back. But that isn't it. I wish my youth would come back. And you just can't have that. And I think that's what Putin wants. And that's why he's failing in this regard, because he thinks he can do something that is just no longer doable.
Wow.
So,
how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'm going to set this up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK says, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, Patrick, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I would say that's 100% correct. And I want to empower them, because if I empower my enemy, I am already respecting the enemy. And respect is part of the battle. And then I can begin to move forward and try to find some commonality, even though we disagree. I mean, I find this a lot. I work alongside the United Nations. I represent a lot of NGOs that are formally affiliated with the United Nations. There are endless enemies out there who are in this mix and are outside of this mix and want it to fail. So I think of another quote that maybe you can add to your 3 or 4 quotes there for the future, and that was Johnson, right? What did Lyndon Johnson say? I'd rather have them pissing outside the tent than pissing inside the tent. He was such a genteel guy, wasn't he?
I'd rather have them pissing outside than inside.
You know, like standing inside the tent pissing outside than standing outside the tent pissing inside. So yeah. I would rather make my enemy someone who I respect and find some commonality with, even if it's not in the area where we are speaking about. I met someone who was, very, they say conservative. I don't know that the people who follow Trump are really conservative. They're just sort of a cult. But he was really strongly into that when we met. And after all the nasty things he said about me, I decided that I just respect him for who he is and asked him, what is it that he likes? And it turns out that he likes cooking and baking, which I also like. And we have actually established a really good friendship. Now, he has moved away from the position he was in. I think that I affected that tremendously. But at the same time, it's virtually unimportant. Yeah. What we found that was common is what brought us together. And I figure if we had no commonality, he would just walk away. He wasn't going to shoot me or kill me. So the people who really mean something to me whether they're my enemy or my friend, are going to get my respect, my interest, and I want to play with them. You know, reality is very malleable. So we can play together with the thoughts and ideas that we want to share together. And that leads to enemies.
That was beautiful. Ram Dass said, "I'm having a real hard time loving George Bush." It's like that's everybody. I'm having a real hard time loving Trump. What else can you do? Hating him doesn't do anything. I mean, sorry, people might hate me for saying that, but the American Indians, indigenous, say your enemy is your best teacher. So you're thinking.
I agree.
So you sort of touched on this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago or so, Volta Cinema, but he basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Faulkner says years later, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, you're asking this question, why do we have to? Why we don't. We want to. We want to. Why do we do it is a different question. Why do we have to? But we don't have to. Nobody's forcing Broadway to exist, but we want it to exist. We want to see the amplification of the things we hold dear, whether we know it or not. Seeing the amplification of all we hold dear and all we are afraid of. And if we can see that amplified by people who make it make sense, then we can further talk about it, we can further love it, or we can be quelled and calmed that other people see the dangers we thought we were the only ones noticing.
Boy, this is important because, I'm always trying, the whole purpose of this is me to regurgitate the wording on the questions. So now I flip it back to you and I say, should I change the wording and say, why do we have to? No, why do we want to?
Well, just why do we? Why do we go to the theater? Why do we listen to music when we
don't use the verb? Why do we go? Yeah, change the verb from want or have to go.
To just go. Why do we go to the theater when we can just sit in the subway and watch real life happen?
Yeah,
that's good. Not amplification. It's too random. Nothing can happen. Or somebody gets shot. But in the theater, it's, again, what I said in the beginning, it's the biggest lie to tell the biggest truth. It's a gigantic lie, what's going on there, in order for us to understand truth.
Yeah. So you've sort of told me your history. This next question is sort of like, just give me a brief rundown. Like, when did you start doing theater? In grade school or high school? Did your parents take you to plays growing up? And where's that tipping point where you go, I want to do theater as my career, and then maybe, what do you call yourself now, Patrick? What's your sort of, like, you're at a party and go, what do you do? What do you say now?
I don't know which one you want me to answer first, but let me just answer what you just said. I'm president of the Global NGO Executive Committee, president of GNEC. GNEC is an acronym like IBM. Nobody knows what IBM means. International Business Machines. It's IBM. This group GNEC represents 1,500 nonprofits that are formally associated with the UN. I care to their needs. I listen when they say, we've just done something great, we're in terrible trouble, everyone's dying, I hear all of that. So I am a kind of quasi-diplomat at this point.
Quasi-diplomat, but you're a negotiator. Would you call yourself a negotiator?
At times I must be. And it is for the NGO world, for civil society.
No, I like quasi-diplomat, negotiator. But walk me through, where was that tipping point? Like, did your parents take you to plays growing up?
I took them to plays growing up.
Oh, okay.
I would have very elaborate shows that I would do in my apartment, in our apartment at that time when we lived in Brooklyn. I would think of
In grade school or high school?
before grade school.
But where were you
I was
getting
like
that?
7 or 8. I would I'd put on Elvis Presley and stand on the coffee table and air guitar and play Elvis Presley. My father taught me how to juggle and do magic when I was like 9. So I was 12. I was entertaining for free at various friends' parties. And then by the time I was 18 and leaving my home, I had to start to think, how am I going to make money? And then I remembered my father taught me how to do magic and juggling. And I went out on, in the streets in Central Park, mostly doing like $200-300 a day for lunch, just cash on the barrelhead. And then I started doing bar mitzvahs, and I became this Italian Sicilian. I became the bar mitzvah king. I would do every weekend, 4 hours minimum, $200 an hour, cash, and I did 4. And then we pass the hat when we doing the show as a theater company. So I was really doing theater until I just wanted to stop, and I wanted to teach people what I was doing, and I moved into education. And then from there, I realized that what I really wanted to do was utilize the theater in order to make social statement. So I created.
But who kicked you over into that? But that was very interesting. Did you go to college?
I did. I went to too many colleges. I went to I went to Adelphi University where I had a scholarship.
Did you study theater?
Yes, I had my scholarship was in theater, but I only lasted 2 years because of the war, Vietnam happening. So I went over to Queens College because there was a guy there, Harry Carlson, who was working with the Strandberg estate, and they were in Sweden. So I was number 72, and I was on my way to Vietnam. I met Harry, enrolled in Queens College, and he sent me off to Sweden. And I remember they were not touching you if you were in Sweden.
Wow! But then where did you find this inspiration to do plays that help the world? Well, how did you word it?
Right around that time, I was going to school in Queens College at that point. Was really a hotbed of political interest. I met Paul Simon there. I saw Simon and Garfunkel. They had just changed their name from Tom and Jerry to Simon and Garfunkel.
Right.
And I was meeting so many artists. I met Billy Joel in the Parkway Diner, who even sings about that. And those people helped me understand that the arts could affect societal change.
Right.
I started to write plays that were fun and funny. All of my plays have women as the lead role. All of my plays have women in the lead. And all of my plays are about them being screwed up mostly by men or other forces, and the world comes to a screeching end. So I was really into it right from the get-go. In my early 20s, I was doing that. And
good. You covered that good. Now let's keep going because I'm not meaning to cut you off, but a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Yeah, I was going to mention Kubrick earlier when we were talking about the film folks and seeing something really awful because you had a moral imperative that you should be living up to. And I think Kubrick did live up to a moral imperative by showing us the opposite, just like you said. And that's what made his work so powerful. For me, in the theater, intentionality is worthless. You can't you can't see intentionality. You have to parse it out. You have to pull it out in action so that they can assume the intention for themselves. Your intention is not as important as your action. People sometimes say, watch what they do, don't listen to what they say. And I think that this is true of the characters that I've created. I don't like them to have intention. When I direct, I also am extremely clear about this. I'm not interested in the Stanislavski method where, I have to feel it. My mother, when I really ask them to create the world of the character, which is what Vakhtangov did in Russia, where every actor has to write their own autobiography, and there have to be clearly understanding of why they enter and exit every time they walk on the stage. So I'm trying to wipe out their intentions because I want the audience to have their intentions fulfilled by clarity of action.
Okay, boy, you got it all going on, dude. And Duchamp said that I'm not saying that facetiously. I mean, it's amazing what you're telling me. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much do you think of your audience when you're writing your play or prepping your play?
Tremendously so. I think because I've often worked outside of the structure of a theater. I mean, I've done my plays in theaters as well. They've been well received and well reviewed. That's all very nice. But I like dealing with the audience. I like coming in from the back of the house rather than being on stage. I like the interplay of audience feeling that this could be them. Like if there were 7 of you in a row and I touch one of you in some way, having an actor actually touch you, all 7 feel it could have been them. And I like playing with the audience and playing with their sense of ease and unease. They like to be in the dark and they like to be behind. When I worked a lot with Jerzy Grotowski, the Polish theater master who's passed. But when we worked together, there was one play where he had everyone in the audience come around and sit in these concentric circles. And he made sure that everybody sat this close together and the circle was this far apart. And it was so like physics, everything. And as soon as they all got settled, he said, okay, come on, the play's in the next room. And it was great. The audience was like, the audience was sitting like they weren't going to move. This was the theater director of the 70s, and they were all so intimidated. He goes, come on, it's in the next room.
It reminds me of another guy in your era in New York City who invented performance art. His name's Jack Smith. He made a film called Flaming Creatures. And that's what he's known for. It's like, oh, it's like porno. It's not porno. He would invite all his friends to watch a film. He says, come to my apartment in the Greenwich Village in 9 p.m. And then he wouldn't do anything until like 2 a.m. So they'd be all falling asleep. And then he'd start loading film into the projector, and it wasn't even edited. And it was really, he really did start performance art per se, because they flipped the art form, the expectation. And really, you evoke this Ruth Draper quote. You know Ruth Draper?
No. I don't know yet that you've mentioned.
Oh my God, she's basically sort of the woman who invented the one-woman performance act. But really? She's way back before they were calling it performance. But anyway, she's right along your sensibility. She said, the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. That sounds great, but how do you do that?
You have to have a lot of guts. When I was in, I forget which show. We were in Stuttgart, and we were doing a Shakespeare play in the Black Forest, and it became so popular, and people had to follow us. The nice thing was we started the play at the edge of the forest, and when the princess runs away because she doesn't want to get married, the audience followed her. And so the audience was really like an extension of her character to us throughout the play. And then when we did this in the Staatstheater, in the Opera House, we did the entire first act of 2 scenes of the first act in front of the curtain. And when the curtain opened up, it was the forest, and we made the audience come up onto the stage with us. And we walked them through this huge opera stage in Stuttgart that we had made into a set. But the audience was part of that set, and they became the animals in the forest. They became trees in the forest. It was really quite interesting. It was directed by Andrei Scherban, the Eastern European director, who's directed a lot of theater in Lower Manhattan in New York. And I like that. I really like the idea of playing with the audience and having them involved in the creative process to a degree. To a certain degree, it works.
I'm going to ask you another question, and what you just said, Patrick, evoked Marshall McLuhan again. His aphorism he's most known for is the medium is the message, or it's the form and the content thing. And most people don't know, he updated it. He says, I'm rebooting it mid-career. He says it's no longer medium is the message. Now it's the user is the content. So this is a lot what you're talking about, is the user, the audience is part of the content. And he said everything we invent extends some humanness. So clothing extends our skin, knife and fork extend our teeth, philosophy.
The glasses.
Yeah, philosophy or religion could extend consciousness. It doesn't have to be tangible. 2 things. What does the juggling ball extend for you? What humanness? And then what was your main instrument in playing music? Was it guitar or piano?
It was guitar, although I learned the piano. And
let's go with that. What does the juggling ball extend? What humanness? And what does the guitar extend? What humanness?
The juggling extends the idea of stasis within chaos.
Yeah.
That the pattern is very tight. The tighter the pattern, the better. So that sense of stasis, but yet the audience looking at 3 balls, 2 hands, and them crossing, they see a chaotic motion.
Nice.
What was the other?
What does the guitar extend?
The piano. What that extends for me is harmony.
Yeah.
I'm not a good singer. I sing in the key of H, I think, and I play basically not very well. So when I hear my own music, it cries out for harmony. It cries out for others to work with it. And therefore, I feel like the music I love to hear, and whether I'm playing it or listening to it, is an attempt to find harmony. And the juggling is a totally different animal, looking for a sense of tight stasis within crazy chaos.
Wow. And Patrick, my friend who works in music says there's 3 T's: technique, theory, and taste. So technique, you can learn how to put on a play. Theory is, well, there's these people who've just, like you talked about the Russian guy, or, people, theater of the press. How does one acquire taste, whether it's in music or theater? Like, you've gravitated towards certain theater people, you've gravitated towards certain music in your life. How does one acquire taste?
Some people spend their whole life not acquiring taste, which is yet another conversation and an unfortunate one. But let's say the majority of people and their tastes, when they are defined and well understood or respected or respectable, are completely different all the time. And that's what the great part of life is. If there was only 3 ways to acquire taste, we might all be dead by now, because it would just be too boring. The fact is that people define taste in ways that we don't expect, and therefore they become taste makers, or we call them now influencers. They don't often influence everyone. Some other people become influencers themselves, and with billions of people on the planet, we face a new day every day, and it's my thinking that that's why we don't commit suicide, because there is this newness to the next day. There is this challenge of the taste that people have created, and they call that taste democracy, a republic, or whatever. It doesn't have to be in the arts. It could be in politics or in other areas of life. And the opportunity to discover those differences is like when you first put your toe into understanding quantum physics. It's like everything you know is wrong. I think that was an album by the Firesign Theater in the 60s. And I feel that taste is malleable, as I mentioned before, but also surprising, shocking, all the time. And that's what makes it great. You know, when the hip hop thing that was, you know, in the halftime of Super Bowl, I must admit, I don't watch television that often. I don't watch Super Bowl, and I didn't see it, but I saw little bits of it on the news. And it certainly created an uproar because it was hip hop. But hip hop didn't exist as a tastemaker or as part of taste 20 years ago. So some people were seeing this, you know, brand new for the first time. This right-wing black lady, whatever her name is, Candace Owens or something, and the right-wingers went crazy. This was sexual depravity and all this kind of crazy stuff. She actually liked it. She said, you know, this is really great. And she lost a lot of her followers. This just happened today and yesterday.
Wow, I didn't know that, because Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre.
Case. Yeah. I know that Snoop Dogg was found to be smoking a joint before he went on. Oh my God, breaking news. Here's some other breaking news. Water is wet.
No, but it was, the beauty was they could have went, and I'm not a TV watcher or a sports watcher, but I do study 5 minutes of commercials every year, once a year, the Super Bowl commercials. And I love to just see who was on the halftime show. And the Dr. Dre and Snoop were happy, and they exuded joy. That wasn't like angry, we're pissed. It was beautiful that they, but you know, there's something that I'm intrigued your reaction to is McLuhan says it's misleading to suppose there's any basic difference between education and entertainment. And then he goes into a little step, but he basically says it's always been true that whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So what's your take on that? Because you've been an entertainer and an educator.
Yeah, no,
So,
I would agree that for entertainment to have any sense of quality, it must be educational. So how do we express our interest then in the clown? The clown falls down and gets up and then trips over his shoe and falls down again. But the thing is, that's really what life is.
yeah.
And although he's kind of silly and stupid and wears a red nose and trips over his feet, so do we. Yeah. So I think it's easy to find education within valid forms of performance and valid forms of visual arts or other kinds of artwork, not just theater. Even when it seems absurd or when it's just seeming like slapstick, there is a deeper meaning when it's good. When it's not good, it stinks. And, you know, it doesn't really matter then.
What do you think the motive of the cave artist was? Not what anthropologists or Werner Herzog said, just your own hunch.
What I said coming into this, that the first reason we communicate is to get what is in our head out.
Right.
So paintings were a way for them to say, I saw this.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't, but I saw this. And I know that this spear here kills that thing. And I'm going to put that out there for people to see. So I think what they were thinking is exactly what we're thinking. How do we make sense of it? How do we communicate it? What is it? What is it, first of all, that we saw, we feel, and how can we represent it? And then how can we communicate it?
Yeah, you almost did a gesture to communicate the next question. Poet said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Trying to picture that now. It's pretty conversant. I certainly like to speak with myself. I have made myself laugh. I think you have as well. And I think that the inner conversant feeling of calm and enjoyment that I have in talking with myself internally is why I feel very comfortable and confident addressing anyone, whether they're my enemy, as we spoke about before,
Right.
or a close friend, or someone who maybe is a fan of yours.
Yeah. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
In this life, I have found repeatedly that it's compromise. That the ones I find who don't really compromise very well are senators, because they're sent from their constituency with a point of view, which is why I didn't support Bernie Sanders, who I love. I mean, I'm from Brooklyn. And I feel like he knows what's right and wrong. Therefore, I want him voting that way in the Senate. But I don't want him to be someone I have to rely on, because I don't feel very comfortable with people who have such strong convictions that those strong convictions will be repeatedly reinforced, rather than having compromise in my mind. I have convictions. I know what I like and don't. I know what I believe in. But when I meet someone who I can meet halfway and find some new reality, I'm very, very open to that. And I discovered that in China. I've taken a lot of trips to China because of my work with the UN. I have an open visa to China, at least I did before the pandemic. And there I find people who just come at a question very differently, because they're Asian. It's like a whole different head. And not that they're Asian, but that they're Asian in China. I mean, there's like a lot going on there. And I feel that, I come with this freedom of being a Brooklyn, New York guy. And I find that, they're very conscious, conservative, even if they're more left or right, it doesn't matter. And I find a new way of thinking because I have to compromise, even if our convictions are the same.
Patrick, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right. You've accomplished a lot in your life. Rate these three elements: luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
Well, it's good that you picked those three, because those are the three that really do affect who we are. You develop some skills, and that leads you to ambition. If you don't develop skills, it's very hard to have ambition. You could have ambition, let's say, I don't know, because I came into this world with my father teaching me all this crazy stuff before I was in school. So I've often thought to myself that the kind of nuts and bolts skills acquisition is how you approach any situation. That you've got to have some skill in the area, the skill to know how to deal with people, or how to fix a car, or whatever the skill might be. And then out of that skill comes an ambition to explain that to people. My father could make he had a double E engineering degree and stuff. He worked for Grumman Aerospace and worked on the lunar excursion module, but he was really into cars. And he made working on cars fun, because he had a skill, and the ambition was not to work on a car, but to bring people with him to work on the car, to sort of have fun with it. And that sort of, you said skill, ambition, and what was the last one?
Luck.
Luck. And who can say anything about luck? I've been one of the luckiest guys in the world. Growing up when I did, as I did, who I am, I've been very, very fortunate. So that is something that has to play in the background. But I know that my father, when we were living where we were living, it was kind of hard for him to find other people to get excited about working on cars, because they were all working on whatever they were working on. My father had a little extra free time. I would come home sometimes from school, from somewhere, and I'd find my friends at my house I wasn't there. And I said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, we came to see your father. You know, he's working on that car and he's got a. So my father was lucky that he had the skill and the ambition, and he had this son who always brought a whole troopload of people around, and eventually he stole them from me. And they were his friends as mine. And when he passed, there were as many of my friends at his funeral than his friends. So, I think that skill is really the basis for me. And like you said, there's no right or wrong. There are other people who do it differently.
Yeah.
It was all about skills. And then I had the ambition to try to share that and the luck that life has brought me.
So well put. Thank you. So a couple of my film heroes say, one of them says, ignore yourself. Jonas Miko says, there is no self-expression. The great jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. I know it's both. It's a stupid question and it depends, but just your hunch again. Is art making, theater making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever culture or technology is dominant?
That for me, the second.
Yeah.
I really don't see the need to do, you know, I don't know, I want to say like classical ballet. It doesn't ring to me. It doesn't appeal to me. So for me, I feel like a vessel. I want to be a vessel. I grew up studying Molière as not only a writer, but also as a director and producer, which he also was. And he said, I want my actors to fly. And I think I can only fly if I live in the world of flight. So I don't want it to be an expression of who I am. I want it to be an expression of what the art form needs from me, wants from me, and what the audience needs to see from me in order to find that greater truth in their own hearts and souls.
Can art making be egoless?
Maybe there's some, you know, religious sects or something that can do art as I don't know. I don't think so. Not for me. For me, I love doing my art. You know, there are people who are frightened of, you know, being on stage.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld said that the number one fear that people have is being on stage. Number two is death. So if you were at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than reading the eulogy. I am the opposite. I love being on stage, and the larger the audience, the better. I spoke right before times. I spoke at the EU City of Youth in Novi Sad, Serbia, and I had 14,000 kids.
Wow.
And it was just heaven. I felt like, you know, I'm touching all of them, even if it's a little bit, and somebody it's a lot. That's a lot of people, and I could see them. You know, it wasn't like TV, but this was great. That was great.
Live. Yeah, Mclean has a line that sort of resonates with that. He says, the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And so Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally, actually, he's in Putin's book. Putin quotes Moshe. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you morphed into a strength.
Yeah, I would agree with this. The concept. I think that a weakness I have often is being Sicilian. I can get hot-headed and upset when I feel that people are willfully being stupid and not, you know, trying to move the ball forward. And where I make that a strength is that I recognize it in myself and I automatically make it a joke. I try to make it funny so that it's self-deprecating. And I wind up saying something about myself being unable to really accept the situation as it is because I'm less of what I should be. And if I can make that funny, then someone else will feel less inhibited to take a step toward me and maybe eradicate the differences that we have. And that's worked for me often, where I'll get really upset and somebody will see I'm upset and they'll start to argue with me, and I'll turn it into a joke. My father did this brilliantly all the time, and it just wipes the tension away. When Bruce Springsteen said, hit him in the funny bone, that's where they expect it the least. And I often find that with my enemies. If I can make them laugh, then they're mine.
It's really good. I asked for 90 minutes, Patrick. We got 5 more minutes. Can you go a little longer, or is that it?
No, I'm with you.
Okay, we'll go a little longer then. Thank you. Tell me one major element in your creativeness that's changed since you started, and one major element that stayed the same.
Well, I guess one of the elements that's changed a lot is the physical. I'm over 70 now, and I spent a lot of my life being an acrobat, and a juggler, and a mime, and a magician, and I really liked bringing the physical into my work. And now I think that has changed, and where I felt less comfortable speaking about what I believe, now that's become much more my motif. But what I have found that works the best is speaking about what I believe in through someone else's eyes. Saying, I think you think this, and seeing if they say, no, I don't, or yes, I do. But actually, it's what I'm feeling that I'm asking them about, rather than telling them, I think you should do X, or I believe Y. I ask, are you thinking Z? Enable them to think about it and either say, yes, I am, or no, I'm thinking exactly the opposite. And that for me is a big help in moving the conversation further without me imposing that I think you should think this, or just saying it. This is what I believe.
Is perception reality?
In much of life, I'm afraid it is. I tell you that in the sort of socio-political world that I live in, working alongside the United Nations and trying to help these groups, if you are perceived to be weak, you tend to be treated as if you are a weak person. And if you are perceived to be strong, you're treated as if you are a strong person. That could have nothing to do with reality. But often perception is reality until it is confronted. Until you can say, I see that you like this guy because he's strong, or I see that you don't like this woman because you see her as weak. But she's going through, or he's going through this, and they believe that. And what do you think of that? And it sort of shares a perspective. And I'm in the position where I need to do that. As president of this organization, I'm dealing with NGOs, et cetera, that need that, and often dealing with youth who are helping those NGOs to help them see what the elders in their group are going through.
Beautiful. Now, Patrick, there's a saying that goes, you create what you resist. Not you, but one creates what one resists. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into you are what you hate. James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So this whole idea, I'm just curious your thoughts. One creates what one resists. What you resist persists, this sort of idea.
Yeah, I'm certainly finding that in my work that currently, that what I try to resist is the feeling of kind of helplessness that most of my constituents that I work with feel because of COVID, because of the environmental crises, because of autocrats who are taking over many countries, and people who are trying to do X in the field, especially to help other people, and are finding themselves thwarted by that. That is a challenge for me. and in helping them and helping myself. I do find that, very pedantically or very basely stating that money does resolve some of these issues, which is why I'm always fundraising to try and help not the programs that these NGOs are doing, but their management, their administration, their back offices, their people, so that they can continue to do what they're doing. Remember, these NGOs that I deal with have already been vetted by the UN. They're doing pretty good work, but most of us have problems with our management, not with the program. So it's a kind of a dance in that the difficulties that I see people facing are products of human nature. They are trying to assist and are products of human nature. And things cost money, take time, and have costs in traveling back and forth to assist in these areas. And that dichotomy of wanting to help and yet feeling the resistance that just comes from time, lack of money, lack of resources, lack of people, lack of assistance from the outside, whether it's environmental or, like I was mentioning, kind of an autocrat. These things really make it difficult, but also make it very, very powerful and useful when successful.
Well put. Anna, anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
When life is on the line. I think you've got to really be angry when you see either the destruction of life or land that is generally happening because someone else is making a buck. And the anger, if it's righteous, can be translated into action. The anger, if it's not righteous, if it's just ego-driven, has nowhere else to go, and that's useless. That's a useless anger. The useful anger is when you see that there is an end that can be accomplished and is not as a matter of fact, being thwarted because of someone's need to steal a dime somewhere. And for me, that's a kind of righteous feeling that I hold inside of myself. I'm not going to be angry at someone else. I'm going to say, this situation makes me upset because I know it can be fixed. And really, the right attitude is to then take the next step, move away from the anger, and try to fix the problem. That's the way I live. I can't say that's good for everybody, but I'm a kind of fix-it brain, wired that way.
I like it. Utah Phillips says, anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
I hope always that the rules are made by what is existence. Existence to me is the rule maker, because someone can tell me that this is the rule. I can tell you that certain thing is the rule, and we can disagree. And who's to say who's right or who's wrong? But if there is a question of existence, like I can't fly and speak Chinese right now. There's certain things that are rules of gravity, rules of my ability and knowledge. And then there are rules that we make together.
Yeah.
I think these are really the most problematic right now, like getting the vaccine. 60% of Americans have gotten the vaccine because they've done their own research. They're going to shoot, horse dewormer up their butts. I think that there comes a point where you say, I've got to do this for the community. So the community makes the rules there. We don't want more people to die. So the community is making those rules. But other times it's just existence. It's that, I can't fly, whether I want to or not.
Patrick, can you forget to die?
I'll let you know.
I like that. These are 5 Alan Watts questions, just in a couple words off the top of your head. Who started it all?
For me, because I am sort of the moment, I think the morning sun.
Oh, I love that. Are we going to make it?
Well, I feel so freaking lucky that I've made it so far that I feel like I've already made it. I feel like everything tomorrow is icing on the cake. I love my life. I love living. And I feel that perhaps there was a point in my life when I made it, but that point is long ago. And now I'm just cruising. I'm happy. I think I'm productive. And I think that's what making it is. It's not like, someday I'll be able to afford a Cadillac. That's not making it, because eventually you're going to be able to buy the Cadillac. Then what? For
Then
me, it is being here, being the person I want to be. And that person was created, and now it's moving down the track. So I feel like I've already made it, and now I want to help others make it.
It's beautiful. Third Alan Watts question: where do we put it?
Too many things, too much stuff. Wasn't it Carlin that talked about?
Yes, Carlin.
The house is like you stuff all that stuff. Where do we put it? That is really the problem. It's a situation. I don't think it's a problem. I think it's a situation because we all share it, and I'm seeing it now. I'm coming to a point in my life where I'm in my 70s, but also my parents just passed, and they have 2 lives worth of stuff here.
Yeah.
Where do we put it? And why do we put it? And how do we put it in the future? It's all really important questions.
You're answering a question with a question. That's what this series is all about, inventing new questions. Who's cleaning it up?
Yeah, unfortunately, the people who clean it up generally aren't the people who enjoy or appreciate it. They're the people who we have left behind, who have either been our executors, who have to deal with certain things that we thought were amazing, and they're cleaning up. But generally, it's either because of love or money. I'm cleaning up my parents because I love them, and other people will clean up, the garbage because they're paid to.
Last Alan Watts question is it serious?
I've always been very, very afraid of solemnity. I think Groucho said this, that, going to the doctor is a solemn experience. Being with funny people who really make you laugh and do things together, that's serious. Having serious fun. So for me, being serious is something very attractive. Being solemn is something I avoid like the plague.
Wow. That's Zappa said, I'm very serious about being not serious.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll go along.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Keep going. Keep going.
Nice.
I really enjoy my life, and I'm thinking, I moved into the arts, diplomacy, I've met all these people, I've been all around the world. Why wouldn't I tell my 12-year-old self, just do it?
Yeah. How do you find peace of mind?
I try not to find peace of mind. I try to really look at what I am here on this earth for. I feel like I'm here to serve. Either serve creativity, serve other people. And so I find that the balance of peace is how I go to sleep without worrying about anything. Other than that, I'm generally on. Like I'm looking for disturbance. When they say, a lot of this new tech is very, it disturbs the economy. I think it disturbs the economy in a good way. We're coming in all electric vehicles, whatever it might be. I like the disturbance. But when I go to sleep, I really like to find peace. The word peace has meaning for me at about 10:30, 11:30 at night.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll? Over or under?
Over. Not even a question.
Why over?
I have no idea. It's been that way all my life. Actually, I saw the original, my mother and I always argued about this, but I saw the original patent for the toilet paper roll, and it comes over the top. And I said, that's it. The guy invented it. I'm with him.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Patrick, if a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Unfortunately, just thinking of it quickly, I go back to the older woman, Barbara Barondes Mclean, who I worked for in the 90s. She had a book that she published, and it was One Life Is Not Enough.
Oh, that's a
I
good
really
title.
like that title very much.
And they want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
I actually like that gluey smell, but let's say mint. But I like the smell of, I used to take
That's
newspaper and books, and I used
yeah.
to really love that scent.
I've had that as an answer before. They want to have a color other than black for some of the ink. What color?
What I love about living in New York is that we live in varying shades of black. Did you ever notice that about New Yorkers? They have a sort of gray black, a darker black, a black black. For me, I really love the color blue. I'm wearing it today. And blue is close to black, so it keeps me close to my roots in NYC.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
I'm just recently learning about this new form of burial that they've been talking about lately, where you're buried at the base of a tree, and
Yeah.
there's a disc that's put at the base of the tree with your name, etc. And I kind of like that idea. That would be a monument. The monument is the tree. I just
Yeah.
planted some peach, apple, and pear trees on this property, and I'm thinking, to be buried at the base of a peach tree, because I love peaches so much, and to know that whenever anybody's standing under there and grabs a peach, they think of me. That's a testament.
Patrick, that's beautiful. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
I've certainly liked these fast, sleek cars. Looking at them, they captivate my mind. I would never want one.
Right.
God forbid, I would never ever want one, because they open this way as opposed to that way. You have to sit very low. They go very fast. It's like there's something about my reptilian brain that can't get into a bullet like that. But I love watching them and seeing, especially now they're beginning to make them electric, so I don't even have to feel guilty about my pleasure of liking them. But I'd never want one.
Patrick, just a few more. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Say, well, here's more of the same.
It's really been fun. I really appreciate it. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
You mean the whole men are from Mars and women are from Venus?
Well, just your feeling. I mean, physical aside, what is the difference?
Being terminally heterosexual, I've always found women to be very nurturing, very appealing, as this opposite sex kind of feeling that they could enable part of what I do not have in my possession. I mean, they make people. I don't do that. You hear that sometimes on these commercials when they say, "Tell your doctor if you intend to become pregnant." So I always want to call my doctor and say, "I intend to become pregnant." I don't know. I can't do that. A woman can, and bringing life into the world is pretty freaking amazing.
Amazing.
So that's something. But
what caused matriarchy?
What killed matriarchy is the question.
There you go. That is good.
I would ask that question differently. I think life caused matriarchy, but men being physically stronger may be what caused patriarchy.
Oh my God.
Unless women learn how to use that, like in what's the Greek play, Lysistrata, where they won't have sex with the men until the war stops. That's powerful. So that's it.
Yeah.
This is dangerous questions, though. I don't want to. I don't want to.
No, I know. No, you handled it well. But
I'm just
I'm just milking these last ones because I'm so intrigued by your whole sensibility. I want to just go into satire for a second because Jonathan Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. Generally, I ask people, can satire be destructive? Now, of course, most people go, yes, because if you do this cartoon in this country, these people might come and kill you, and they think death is destructive. But my friend who wrote, with Robin Williams, I said, can satire be destructive? And he says, that's the job of satire.
I was going to say the same exact thing. That's exactly.
Wow. Because now just suss out.
If you come after me because I've done good satire in a way, then that means it's been successful. I mean, I would agree with that last statement.
Well, what's the function of satire in the big picture? I'm sort of trying to form a better question because can satire be destructive? The smart people really nail it and they go, yes, but most people go, well, no, it can't. They go,
whatever.
Anyways, you get what is the function of satire?
I thought you were going to say something different when you said hold up the mirror.
Yeah.
And see everyone but ourselves. I think satire enables us to hold up a mirror that is a funhouse mirror. Yeah. So we can see ourselves in a funny, different way that is remarkably revealing and yet takes away all of our inhibitions because it's satire. And we see ourselves as tall or too fat or too whatever, like a funhouse mirror. We don't want to see ourselves that way, which is why it's satirical, but we do, and we learn from that.
Wow. How do we keep our governments from going to war?
It really depends. I think that most war is based on failure. There was a failure between you and I to reach an agreement, and one of us with maybe more testosterone or whatever is going to start and throw a punch at the other one. When you have an autocrat, again, like our current situation with Putin, I think the way that Biden has cleverly exposed every one of his advances, which is generally not done. I mean, the State Department keeps saying, I can't believe we're just coming out and saying what we have found out without any proof, because Putin could say, what do you mean I was going to do a false flag operation? Prove it. But the Russian people and the Ukrainian people know Putin, and they're like, you don't got to prove it. We know you're right. So having the ability, having that ability is one that I think makes it possible to expose the warrior with their pants down. And we want to succeed at diplomacy. I mean, the UN is a perfect example of this. I have my little UN button on here. We don't know how many wars we have not had because the UN has stopped them. We do know that they stopped polio. We know that they stopped countries from going more than 3 miles outside their border. We know that the International Postal Code. I mean, you can go down the list of things that the UN has done proactively and positively. But I contend, and I've been in these meetings where I've seen people be very angry to the point of wanting war and eventually being calmed down by the structure of all of us meeting together. Like we all come to your house, and it's easier to not go to war because we're all at your house. And what Churchill said, jaw, 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 instead of war, war, war. The more you talk, and the more you talk with a third party, it lessens the need for war and enables the greater understanding that we need for peace.
Well put, really inspiring. And back to Frank Zappa, he said, well, we won't have a nuclear war because there's too much real estate involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Not much he said that I don't agree with. I mean, he talks about civics. Often he talked about civics and how much we need it. Look at our country and how we've forgotten to teach civics in high school and where it's led us to.
Yeah. Well, I don't want this to end, but just a couple more here. So Thornton Wilder, what a great playwright. He was actually very much into James Joyce and Finnegan's Wake. He said, art is confession. Art is the secret told, but art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Patrick, you've been very generous and enlightened me for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this, but what's it really all about for you?
Well, what you said leading into your question, Tom Stoppard said that the playwright is the faucet. He opens, or she opens and closes the spigot of information. And without the playwright, the audience won't know when to know what. And with the playwright, they know a little now, a little bit more later, a little bit more later. And that's the art of telling a good story. And what was your last question then to me?
Well, it's a funny thing because I'm implying that I just say, what's it really all about for you? So I don't really have this worked out as a good thing because I'm implying like, well, you've held back. Now tell me your secret, but it's sort of like, the artist does do that. You really said that we tell the secret and we hide it to bring the audience in. But I just flip it and say, what's it really all about for you?
Alfie. What's it all about, Alfie?
Yeah, what's it all about, Alfie?
So, I think that the joy I find in life, this is not going to be a good answer, is that I feel it changes day to day.
Yeah.
Which is why I love my life. I love life, not my life, just life. Because what it's all about today is really different. And, it might even have to do with the weather. It could be very, very incidental like that. We've had so much snow. I know this, you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. But we in Connecticut have been snowbound this year.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it's going to be 62 out of nowhere. So I'm really living to go to sleep right now so I can wake up tomorrow and watch it all melt. And look outside without my snowman suit on. So I do love the change, and I feel that the change is the only constant for me.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Changes. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that really inspires you?
It's always the youth. I hate to say it because that sounds like such a platitude, but young people today, not only some of the young people I meet today, and I meet many because I started something at the UN called the Youth Assembly, and we bring in thousands of young people. Until the COVID, I personally brought in thousands of young people from around the world twice a year for 15 years. At the UN. It's one of the jobs I've had. And how do I say this? I feel that there are not only things that we need that we don't have, but there are ways to get to those things that are new and different that we never thought about before. And that's what youth seems to understand innately. Are these new ways of thinking, working, processing information so that it's not about what we don't have and getting to what we want or need to have, want to have. But it's the process. How do we move from A to B? That is starting to change. That movement, like the electric power cars, for instance. Not only are some cars like the Ford 150 and the Hyundai electric, but they can run the house.
Yeah.
I mean, you can plug your house into a Ford F-150 truck now, and it will run the house.
Nice.
So that kind of way of getting from A to B was something we never really even thought about.
Yeah.
And now a new generation is just taking that and moving it forward. I
Yeah.
thought F-150, what am I going to have to buy a pickup truck? Because I think there's a cool idea. Now the Hyundai station wagon, the little sedan, is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So as people find different ways to get from A to B, we will benefit, because we'll not only get to a place where we hope to be, but we'll find getting there in very different ways, and that for me is exciting.
Beautiful. And the last question is funny because it's what gives you the most optimism, and I'm just going to suss it out because most people say, what gives you the most optimism? They'll say, my son or my daughter, young people, youth. And you've said that in the cultural shift question as your answer, youth. And I appreciate that because so many people I interview believe that. We've got to believe in the youth, and I see them as being part of my optimism on carrying on. So you brought up Groucho Marx, and my first question is, what's the best thing for a human being? Sort of comes from Wilhelm Reich saying other people. And you said that, sharing. And the last question was what they asked Groucho at the end of his life. They go, what gives you the most optimism? And he said, other people. So it's like this full circle thing. So, I mean, I'm just curious, Patrick, it's been enlightening talking to you because you're an optimist. I mean, do you see yourself as an optimist? What's the root of your optimism? More how your parents raised you, on your own, your DNA, how did you get to be?
DNA. But I mean, certainly my parents were very optimistic. They were always looking to tomorrow and with a bright future. They really believed in tomorrow. But also just what I've seen around the world. I've looked for success, and I've lived through tragedy. I met almost every family member who had someone perish in 9/11.
Yeah.
I received $3.1 million from the Rotary and Lions and Hitachi to do art therapy work for those people. And then I moved from there to working with Katrina. So in that phase of my life, I was seeing the worst of what had happened and the best in human beings. And that is extremely meaningful to me. I met some people who I, of course, then had lifetime friendships and relationships with. And this beautiful lifetime friendship has come out of the most ugly of situations. So besides youth, where I think it's at is also in the past. We live in the past and the future. So I know that the neighborhood I live in here really respects the past. And I can see it in the monuments, the park, this community as a whole. And yet I feel that is what feeds the future, and the two are inextricably linked. Yeah. So what I said before about the transition, I really feel is about the youth. But what I find really great is an understanding of the past and the historical, and the way to complement the youth by having that kind of intergenerational, if you will, approach guides a lot of my work at the UN. It's always intergenerational. I try to have people in their 70s and 80s and their tweens and teens and 20s all working on the same project, and generally together.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, we've got to give a salute out to Flash for introducing this. I really appreciate that. Was very nice of her. And I really appreciate your time and energy here. It's been truly enlightening. And I'll end with the Mclean quote. He said, communication of the new is a miracle, but not impossible. So I think I really was communicated a lot of newness today, and it really inspired me. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, Patrick.
Bye-bye.